I have some clients, they make big money, 6, almost 7 figures, but they're not saving as much. And so when they retire and they're living the lifestyle of high 6 figures, they can't live that lifestyle anymore. They're not thinking about that, but you need to.
This is Work in Progress. I'm your host, Gail Calvert. And yes, I'm a work in progress. So today I'm talking with Vicki Hall, powerhouse advocate for women's financial empowerment. Vicki's journey spans her time as a WNBA athlete, a coach, and now as a financial advisor, where she's used her experience to help women control their financial futures. I'm super excited to have you here because I am definitely one of those women that needs all of the education I can get from a financial standpoint. You're unfiltered, you're honest, which we love here. And we're going to give some real actionable tips to everybody that, you can walk away with feeling like maybe you're a little less work in progress on finances, a little more financially prepared. So before we get into the advice, Vicki, it would be great if you could share a little bit about how you went from basketball player, WNBA coach, now financial advisor. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, a lot of people, when they see, they're like, what is this basketball lady talking about finance, but they don't know the rest of the story. And that started when I was a high school senior. We woke up in our household and found out that my dad had passed away in his sleep. We were all devastated, clearly. I was a senior going off to college to the University of Texas. My brother was going to go to grad school. And my mom was about to be a real empty nester completely. My dad didn't share a lot of the finances with my mom, so she didn't know. And then now all of a sudden, everything was thrown in her lap. And she needed help. She wanted to a trusted advisor who worked for a broker and sold her an annuity, which if you don't know about that, that's fine. A lot of people don't, so don't think, oh my God.
I don't. I'll speak for those of us out there. Tell us what it is.
An annuity, basically, it's kind of like a lot of people will sell them to you as assured income. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you put a chunk of money into this fund, into this tool, and they're going to give you a certain percent back, or it could be variable, it will move. It's cut off at the top and cut off on the bottom. So you're assured a certain amount of money, and people are like, oh my God, that sounds great. But what you don't know is that if you haven't done your homework, the history of the market is you're going to more than likely make more than what they're offering. And my mom at 47 years old still had about 17 years to be putting money into the market. So she had a long time horizon. So in order to put her in an annuity and have her make this small amount of money at that point in time really wasn't smart. And the reason why they do that is because they make high commissions off of that. So once that happened, it really put our family in a terrible position, struggled financially. And so when I went off to Europe after my time with the University of Texas and Team USA, and I started making my own money, I was like, okay, we're going to figure out what we're doing. So I started taking seminars and classes. And then I helped my mom, and she helped me too. I mean, we worked together because she was very motivated after that as well. We managed our money and did a great job of it. And so after that, I finished playing at 40. I started to coach for a while because I love basketball. And then my mom got ill and I said, it's time to move home. And what else can I do and make a difference? And I thought, why don't I get into finance and help women and just people in general, but help people with some things that they got us on.
Right. I mean, and that's one of my biggest fears, what you talked about with your mom is I know enough to know that, I need a financial advisor and have made those decisions, but I don't feel I know enough to avoid making a really disastrous mistake. So I'm sure there are a lot of people who are just not doing anything for fear that if I make the wrong decision or if I'm sold the wrong product, I'm going to be worse off.
Right.
So maybe we could just start basic right there, Vicki. If somebody is thinking, I know I should talk to somebody, what is 101 on that? Like you're talking about fiduciary responsibilities and brokers and these different things. Like what can somebody who really doesn't know at all maybe look for in an advisor?
Okay, so first and foremost, and I'm not trying to badmouth brokers because not everybody is bad. Like they're not all bad. Fiduciary responsibility means we take an oath to do the best that we can for our clients, but with a broker and a registered investment advisor, those fiduciary responsibilities are different. For a broker, their fiduciary, if I was an advisor at Schwab, Fidelity, Raymond James, Edward Jones, Merrill Lynch, JP Morgan, my fiduciary responsibility is to the broker. Do what's best for the broker to make them money. And I'm making me money too because I'm paid on a commission. At a registered investment advisor, now at CH Douglas, my fiduciary responsibility is to our client. And we're held to that standard. So first, that's something to look at and to look into. Doesn't mean all of them are bad, but you have to do your homework and understand, what you're getting. And that's why they try to sell you annuities and say different things about it because they get higher commissions. Another thing maybe to ask is we're a different firm than most, but I'm paid on a salary. I am not paid by commission. Mm-hmm. So when you think about that, it doesn't matter what I'm selling you because I'm not going to make more. If it were different, then, it's human nature to want to sell you something else because, oh my gosh, I need this for that or whatever. And that's not great, but that happens.
Right. Okay.
So those are some things to kind of look for and ask about how, and always, if people are not transparent about fees, run.
Okay. 3 things you should look for is what kind of company they are working for, how they're compensated, what kind of fees they may be charging. Okay. Very good.
And then you want to know, you want to be able to see that when you get your quarterly reports about what your money is doing, and please make sure you look at them. You want to make sure that you understand what fees are being taken out.
Okay. That's very good. So it's similar on this topic. I'm thinking of this more as sort of 101, like you're listening and you want to build a foundation, just really get started. And I want to say this loud and clear for everybody listening. It doesn't matter how old you are if you want to get started. So don't feel bad. Don't feel embarrassed. It doesn't matter how old you are. Okay, I just want to go out and say that. So if somebody's getting started, what are the first 3 steps that they should take to just get control of their money? I mean, we're inundated. Every credit card is willing to give you a spending graph or a chart or this or that. So now it's like the data's all there, but maybe that's too much. What are the first 3 steps someone should take?
Let's find out, what is your paycheck? How much money am I actually bringing home? So you look at your pay stub, and on your pay stub, it will say, total. And then it will talk about like what's being put into your 401k. If you're paid bi-monthly, then there'll be, it'll be half of that, of course. And it will talk about, how much is going to your Social Security and Medicare, how much is going to your retirement, how much is going to whatever else you've signed up for in your benefits. So understanding how much money do I have coming in, gross and net, after all those expenses, this is what I have. So how much can I afford to spend? Right? So number 1, let's figure that out. Number 2, when we start to figure out and think about money and how, okay, now I know I'm going to put away $200 or $250 every month. Okay? Now understand that when you put that away, you either with your 401k, you've chosen a fund or something to put that into that's working for you. Usually it's going to be a target fund. And a target fund means you pick the date that you're going to retire. That will adjust itself risk tolerance wise based on time to how aggressively you are in the market.
Right.
So kind of having an idea of that will help you.
Right. And I could simplify it because I went through that as, it was a corporate employee where I had the 401k. Basically what you're saying is here is when approximately I am looking to retire. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have some fancy calculation at this point, right? No. It just helps determine where they're going to invest your money. It is it is pretty simple.
we used to all have pensions, right? Our parents or grandparents had pensions. Well, they took that away from us because whatever. So now we're in charge of it. So to do a little research into it won't hurt because this is what is supposed to pay you later. So understanding that, and yes, nobody has time for that, but please take some time for your future because it's important.
Yeah.
Then after that, understanding your risk tolerance. So it's kind of hard to talk about, but what happens with this is there's some of us that love to ride roller coasters, and there's other of us that are ground huggers, and I'm going to stay while you're on the high rise roller coaster. I'm going to be down there trying to win an animal at the basketball shoot thing because I don't want to do a roller coaster because I'm afraid. So it's like the aggressive, woo, I want to ride a roller coaster. So I'm very aggressive and I want to make a lot of money. And the thought of my money going down doesn't really bother me because I know it's going to come back. Mm-hmm. That's aggressive. So this is like your risk tolerances. Because the reason why this is important and try to kind of identify for yourself, it's because you don't want to do the biggest no-no. And that is when the markets go down, selling on a low. Mm-hmm. Because now if your money is invested and, you see some of these times where we have these big dips, okay? And oh my God, I lost $15,000 in a day. You don't lose that money until you sell it, okay? But what's important in that risk tolerance, and your risk gets less and less as you get older because you have less time to make it up. So it's important that we don't sell on a low and buy on a high, if that makes sense, I hope.
It does. And all of these people can dive into deeper. Like we can go into these topics deeper, but this is perfect to give people an idea. And like we always say, give us your questions, right? Throw any questions in the comments and we can come back and answer them. We talk about the first 3 steps. One is to know how much money you're making. Mm-hmm. The second is to have an idea of when you might look to retire. Like how much time do you have to save or do something with your money, if you will? Mm-hmm. Your risk tolerance, you said, right? Which in my experience also goes with time.
Right. That's kind of the two. And then something else that a lot of people want to know is how long will it take my money to double? So compounding, the power of compounding. So if I start to save $5,000 a year, how long will it take that money to be $10,000? And there are things called a compounding calculator that you can Google and it will tell you. And basically what you need to know is what is my return? So if I get I'm saving $5,000 and I'm getting a 9% return, it'll take me I don't know I'm just going to say 8 years for that to double.
Right.
Okay. So understanding that, so then you kind of have an idea of what does this look like and what should it look like.
Okay. You mentioned how much you have to save each month, right? People need to look at how much money are you making and then how much money can you put aside to save or invest? So that obviously leads to the whole budget question.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on creating a budget? I know a lot of people who say, here's what my budget is, and it's based on what I spend. Right. How should someone create a budget?
Basically, like I said, the first thing is how much do I make? And then understanding how much can I spend? So this has to do with when you're picking an apartment or deciding if I'm buying a house or not. How much can I afford to spend on where I live? What do I spend on my food? Like the necessities. So these are the things that you have to have. You need food, shelter, gas for your car, you need insurance. So how much do those things cost me? Then look at my other expenses. And these are my wants. DoorDash subscriptions. How much do I spend at the mall, on a new pair of shoes or whatever? And trying to understand what my limits are. Okay, so I'm going to save $250. You want to try to save 10% of your paycheck for your future. And then from there okay, after I have my incidentals that I have to spend and I have this is how much I'm saving, my 10%, how much do I have left over? And then I know how much I have for DoorDash and my shoes. Make sense?
This makes sense. And when you're on your own, you can make those decisions and adhere to them or not. When you add a partner to this discussion, we can tell by your face. Yes, I'm sure you see this a lot, right? And I can say for myself, I mean, when my, then fiance and I were discussing how were we going to manage our money when we were married, I was guided basically by how my parents did it. That was it. And truly, until you and I were talking a few weeks ago, I had not really thought practically about, of course, you should have conversations with your partner before you end up together and merging financials. So what are the top money conversations that you think every couple should have before they get serious and decide to potentially merge financially?
When you start to see somebody seriously, and one of the conversations you usually have is about STDs, right? That's a tough one. But you kind of want to know, right?
Yeah.
It's a tough one. You want to sweat over that one. But just as important as that is, because that's your health, is debt. How much debt am I bringing to the table? Do I have $30,000 of credit card debt? Do I have $100,000 of student loan debt? Because when you marry, you merge that debt. Not always, like student loan doesn't necessarily merge, but I mean, now if this person is going to be with me for the rest of my life, then that debt does affect me, right? It's a very hard conversation, but it's a very real one and a very important one. Number two would be everybody looks at money differently, so differently. Usually in a relationship, there is a spender and a saver. Start to understand who you're with. And you don't understand that until you start talking to them and talk about what's important to you. What are your goals? I mean, you could be dating somebody who doesn't want to save a penny. I think I'm going to live off of every penny I have now. And who cares what happens when I'm 60? Because I don't care about it right now. I want my BMW. So those conversations are so important. I can't tell you enough. And, you're going to be like, oh, well, I love him so much. You're really not going to love him that much later when it's 15 years into it. You have no money. And then now you have children and you want to send them to college. And now you've got that stress. And then the third, I'd say, who are they as a financial being? Because we're financial beings. And then what are their goals? Like, do they have a goal of retiring at 65? Do they know a lot about finances? What do they think about it? You don't have to know their number, but like if you're talking about marrying somebody,
I think you should know their number.
Not when you first start dating, like how much do you have? No. But I mean, if it gets to the point where you're going to marry them and you want to spend the rest of your life with them, it's important because finances, it causes almost 50% of divorces. Mm-hmm. So talk about them beforehand.
Yeah, I would add another one. You said, what are their goals? But also, what do they want to spend money on? Like, are you a vacation person? Are you a shopper? Are you, basically, money fuels everything in our lives. Let's just be honest. And unfortunately, it is a scary topic. Like, it just is. People feel overwhelmed. There's all sorts of emotion that gets tied to finances, positive or negative, right? I mean, I speak to people who have a lot of money and don't want anybody to know that because that causes a whole lot of resentment and problems. So we're not just talking about people who maybe don't have money or are struggling, but it is just a difficult conversation, I think, all around. So I love that you're talking about this and encouraging people to have these conversations early. And like you said, maybe not the first date, but not after you've already decided to get married. It's too late.
No.
It's too late. And I'm happy to be honest. I promised everybody I always would be. When my now ex-husband, but when we were dating, I mean, we talked about finances. So it wasn't like, I'm not sitting here saying, oh gosh, well, we never talked about it. We did, but I was not having informed conversations like this about how is this going to impact us as a couple and as parents and all of that.
One of the other conversations you have before you get married, right, or you decide to, is, do you want to have kids? That's the big one, right? Do you want to be with somebody where we're going to pay for their college, or are they going to work for it themselves? Or, I mean, because you know what, that's going to take a big chunk out of what you two are making. There's a lot of people whose self-worth, most people, is tied up to their finances. And they're more interested in keeping up with their neighbor who has whatever than saving for Johnny who's going to college in 10 years.
Right.
So these are so, so important.
Yes. One more question on this before we jump to another topic. What are your views on partners having joined bank accounts, separate bank accounts? Again, I'm getting divorced, and it is really sad when I know the number of women who cannot leave a marriage that is not good for them because they cannot afford to leave the marriage. Not only because maybe they don't have their own bank account, they have to pay for a lawyer, which is 5, sometimes 6 figures, if you can imagine. Yes.
So, first and foremost, it's really important that when you're getting your paycheck, you both have, I have my account that my money's coming to, they have their account that their money's coming to, and then every month we're putting a certain amount into our account. So you always have a separate account. It's very important because you never know what's going to ever happen, right? And that sounds negative or whatever, and I'm sorry, but a lot of people, what happens is they will give it all the responsibility to one person. They put it all in their name or whatever. Even the credit cards are in one person's name. And then when you get divorced, you don't have any credit. So it's important that you establish your own financial individuality, even when you're married.
If you are listening right now and you're happily married and you do not have your own bank account, I want you to happily create your own bank account. I want you to happily get your own credit card. That doesn't mean that you no longer like your partner. It doesn't mean you want to break up, but it is never too late, and start now. Again, not because you're planning to get divorced, but because, like you said, you have no idea what's going to happen.
No.
It could be a death in the family, right? This is not about anything negative. And again, like I speak from experience, like your partner might think it's because of something negative, and it's not. You have to take care of yourself.
In your own financial individuality, it is okay to have, you have yours, they have theirs, and then you have ours, the we. And then that way, you know, it's a lot easier to manage if anything were to happen. And, you know, just because maybe we don't agree on certain things, right? And they want to buy a boat and I don't want to buy a boat. Well, buy a boat with your money. So you can have those conversations that way. But if all of our money's in one, if one of the people in the relationship makes more than the other, and that's the one that wants a boat, they're going to say, well, I make all the money anyway, I'm going to buy the boat. Then you're kind of stuck in this cycle. And this way, it gives you your own breathing room a little bit.
Right. Okay, I have one more. This might be a polarizing question, a spicy question. What are your thoughts on being a stay-at-home mom? In this topic, I have my own. I think it's a bad idea. I'm sorry. Moms out there, I'm sorry. What do you do when you're a stay-at-home mom?
I would still do the same thing, and I would ask a certain amount of his check that goes into my account. God, please do that, because if you don't, and then you end up later, you're going to get really stuck. So you're giving up your career to take care of the children that you've always wanted, right? And that's a blessing that you have these children. And yes, I want to be there for them growing up. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I understand it. But understand this, that when you do that, now I've taken 10, 12, whatever, 5 years off from the workforce. Now I have to go back, try to reinvent myself, start a new career. What am I going to make? Or if this happens and you haven't done that and something happens to the marriage, now I have to start from scratch and I have no career. I have no bank account because I made no money. And I mean, yes, you'll get half of his retirement probably in the divorce, but that doesn't help you right now because you're probably not 59 and a half. So this is why even if you're going to be a stay-at-home mom, it's even more important because you're giving up more of your individuality for the family.
I appreciate that. I think that's so important because, again, like we were talking about, when you fall in love with somebody, you think it's going to be great for your whole life, but you have to have these hard questions. Same thing when you have kids, think it's all going to be great, but we just don't know what's going to happen in life. I'm coming at it from like being in the second half of my life and thinking, God, I wish I knew these things then.
I mean, do you walk around with just plan A? I've never done that in my life. I've always had an A, a B, and a C, and maybe a D too. You know, I'm like, even for your own family and peace of mind, don't walk around with just a one plan A plan because life happens and all of a sudden it's changed. So that's why these are so important. Please, whenever you have children, make sure you have life insurance, term, not the whole life or the universal, term life insurance. So if something happens to one of the spouses, then they're covered so you can go on with your lives.
Absolutely. So you touched on something I want to talk about too, is career pivots. You did it, obviously, going from basketball to finance. I talk to so many women who have or would like to pivot. So are there a few things that you think you must have if you're going to pivot financially?
Sometimes you don't have a choice, you have to pivot. But this is why your emergency savings is so, so, so important. In the emergency savings, when I say that, it's 3 to 6 months of your expenses, not the wish list expenses, but my living true expenses. So if something happens to me, if I lose my job, I've got this for 3 to 6 months, and while I'm trying to figure something else out. And let me tell you this, like I went from pro basketball player, I was a coach that coached in college, Division I and the pros. I mean, I was making a good salary, right? I went from that to having to pass my exams, Series 7 and 66 for finance. And I went from making 6 figures to, what was it, 53,000. And I was like, oh, dang. You know, where I'm going to the grocery and I'm not looking at how much stuff costs. I'm just getting, oh, I want this. I'm not. And then now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, crap. You know, that cheese, I'm not getting that cheese. That's $8 cheese. So just understanding that there's going to be a time period that you're going to have to readjust. And hopefully you have your emergency savings ready so you don't have to dig into your other savings because you really don't want to take money out of your 401ks and your IRAs if you don't have to. It's kind of a good exercise to tighten up the bootstraps and say, well, we're living like this for a while, but the goal is obviously to get back to where you were, right?
Right, right. What about freelancers? We have so many people in the economy now that are fractional gig workers, right? When you don't have that predictable salary, even though we know anything can happen to that, but when you can't do the math so predictably, do you have any tips for people who might be freelance?
Pay yourself first, okay? So when I say pay yourself first, if you've used up your emergency savings, start to put, 4% into your emergency savings. If you can't do 10% because it's too high and your emergency saving has dwindled to nothing, then maybe it has to be 4 for a little while, until you can build it back up. But every time you get that paycheck, that's paying yourself first, even though it doesn't feel like it because I'm not going out to dinner, I'm not doing this and that, but you are helping yourself later. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yes. You said, and I asked you, what's the question you get all the time? And everybody says, Vicki, what is my number? How much money do I need to retire? Obviously, you can't tell everybody what their number is right now. How can someone figure it out?
Okay, well, there are some generic ways to do it. You see these people on TikTok and whatever, it's 15 times the, what my salary is and all this other stuff. And a lot of those times, those don't take into account taxes and different things. Because when you see your 401k, if your 401k is a regular 401k, not a Roth, a regular, understand that in that retirement account, they have not taken taxes out yet. So if I have $100,000 in my regular retirement account, I really don't have $100,000. It depends on what my tax bracket will be when I do retire. So if it's 12%, 12% off the top, 20% off the top. So when you're looking at that figure, adjust that because people don't think about that. And then when it comes to how much do I need to retire? What really matters is how much do I spend? How much do I spend? Because we all want to continue. If your lifestyle, the way you're living right now, you like it, it's comfortable. I feel good here. I get to go to the grocery and I don't have to look at the prices, or I don't have to just buy this when it's on sale. It's good to do that anyway to save, But if you like that, then figure out, and it goes back to when I said, look at your paycheck, look at your expenses, figure out how much am I spending on average a month. And then that's going to tell you and then multiply that by a year. So that tells you how much I spend. And that's going to tell you how much I'm going to need later, right? For my retirement to continue the way I live. I have some clients, they make big money, almost 7 figures, but they're not saving as much. And so when they retire and they're living the lifestyle of high 6 figures, they can't live that lifestyle anymore. They're not thinking about that. But you need to.
If you could give your 25-year-old self one financial tip, what would it be?
Well, I was so fortunate that I was so mad at her. I got my first paycheck ever when I was playing for Team USA in basketball. We were going to play for the World Championships, and they gave us $2,000. And this was, I was 19 years old or 20. And I was like, oh my God, I'm getting a stereo. Woo! I've always wanted it. And she's like, oh, no, you're not. And I was like, what? And she's like, this amount is we're going to open an account. We opened it at Schwab, and it's going in there and we're going to invest it. And I was so mad. But that was the smartest thing ever. And I did it and I continued to do it. But had I understood compounding better, I would have saved even more.
Yeah, I see this on social media too, and I hope people are seeing it in a good way more now than I did when I was younger, that if you save X amount now, really? What you will have in 10, 20, 30 years, even I see it now, like if you put this much away for your children a week, say $10, I'm making this up, what that money will end up being in X years. Where do you recommend putting, let's say, simple savings like that, like for kids or for yourself, and you're not going and hiring a broker? If you just want to save and have some compounding interest, do you recommend anything?
You can open an account at Schwab or Fidelity. You can do that yourself. And they even have robo investing where, it's AI, and they'll ask you those risk tolerance questionnaires so they know your risk tolerance, like we talked about earlier, and they'll invest you that way. It's not always the best, but you know what? If that's what you feel comfortable doing, please do it.
Right. We're just talking about just getting started, right? And doing something simple.
And then open that 529 for your kids early. There is a certain amount you want to put in there, but now they've made new rules that you can roll a certain amount of money from, if you're 529, which is a college plan or an education plan, you can roll that into a Roth up to a certain amount. So, those things are smart.
That is really good. That's good to know. I didn't even know that now you can roll it into a Roth, because sometimes we'd received guidance like, well, if you put too much there and then one of your children doesn't go to college, what happens to that money? You're not concerned about that.
Now there are limits. It's like $35,000. So like if you have, unless you're going to send your kid to Ivy League, and if one child has, a lot, you can roll it to the siblings. But you want to make sure you don't have way more than like $35,000 to $40,000 left over. Then you can roll it to a Roth. But if you don't, then you're going to pay a penalty.
Right. Okay. I know we're about out of time, so I have some questions. I ask everybody these fun questions, Vicki. This is not a tough one. No finance needed.
Okay.
Are you coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Hot or iced, or it depends?
Oh, it depends. If it's hot outside, I'm having iced coffee.
Okay, some people are really opinionated about this, Vicki. You wouldn't believe how strongly people feel about this. Always hot, no matter what, or vice versa. Okay. You're a basketball player, WNBA. Who's your team? Who's your player right now that you're watching?
I'm partial to the Minnesota Lynx because I help them sometimes with advanced scouting. They contract me out sometimes. But they're a great team. I love Cheryl Reeves. She does a tremendous job. And Collier is just a tremendous basketball player. Of course, I mean, in Indiana, and Caitlin Clark, you got to give her just due. She's great. There's just so many really good players. It's hard to pick one.
No, that's awesome. And I'm happy to see how much play WNBA is getting now, finally, right? All right, my last question for you is, what is your hype song? Do you have one, Vicki? When you need to get pumped up or you need to get happy and you need a song, what are you playing?
I've always kind of been an underdog, believe it or not. And so it's kind of rap, though, believe it or not.
Yeah, go for it.
It's starting from the bottom, now we're here.
I love it. And I love all the different, selections we get. We have a playlist at Work in Progress on Spotify. So we're going to add your song to the playlist. And we have such a great eclectic mix of what makes all of our guests happy. So
well, it's hard for me because I listen to I listen to Italian. I speak Italian. I listen to Italian. I listen to country, classic, but I also listen to rap. So.
Me too. I love it all. So that's awesome. Vicki, thank you so much. This has been great. And I would love to see any questions and comments from listeners out there so that we can bring Vicki back. There's so much, we just scratched the surface. So thank you. And I hope to have you back soon.
Oh, we'd love to do it. And please ask any questions. Don't be ashamed. You didn't get any of this in high school or college. There's no good financial ed that we're made to do. So don't feel bad about it, and it's never too late.
I love that. Thank you. All right. We'll see you soon.
All right.
I hope that was helpful. If you know someone that you go to for this topic, send them my way. After all, we're just figuring this out together. See you next time.